Real Community Talks, where real conversations with community influencers are made available to everyone. I'm your host, Matt DeSilva, and on today's episode, we have my good friend and also one of my young adults pastors, Lee Daley, on the show. Kara, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So, for those of you who may not know who Kara is a... Are you ready for this?
Oh my goodness, I'm a little worried.
A young adults pastor / minister / I don't know. There's like so many different ways to say a pastor, but I don't know which one you prefer. A teacher of many things, a life counselor, a worship leader, an administrator, a graphic designer, graduated from Master's College and Seminary with a Bachelor of Theology in cross-cultural studies, has traveled to multiple places around the world, a Krav Maga expert, a knitting enthusiast, a fellow comic book nerd, a professional K-pop / drama fan, and an inspiring author who's currently working on a few books.
Wow.
So was that accurate?
Well, I don't know if I would say Krav Maga expert.
So actually, what is Krav Maga, to be honest?
Krav Maga?
Yeah.
It's Israeli hand-to-hand combat.
Mm.
And I heard about it through a television show that I used to watch. And it said this girl would always go for Krav Maga lessons, but no one ever knew what it was. Mm. So it got me a little curious, and I looked into it, and I was like, oh, that was really good. And then I found a Groupon somewhere, and I started lessons, and I loved it.
Wow.
So
that's
great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so with that, why don't we segue into what's your origin story? So who is Lee Daley, and where are you from?
Oh, wow. So I'm originally from Bathurst, New Brunswick. It's a small community out on the East Coast. And yeah, I was born there with, I've got a younger sister as well. And just my parents and I, we lived in a small trailer park out there, and just started off that way. Went to school, and my parents put me like all the way on the other side of the city just so that I could take French immersion, because that was really important to them. Mm-hmm. And yeah, just grew up there, small town, small community, kind of like, everybody.
Yeah.
Whenever you go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
And went to high school, and always was fascinated with what was beyond this community. And my parents, we were always on like a really strict budget, but they would always try and take us places locally within, like, not too far away, just a couple of hours away, do camping and stuff. But I remember just being like, I want to see more. And so I got the opportunity to come to Toronto and actually do some ministry. And that was mind blowing to me. Like, I had never seen poverty before. And being able to see that for the first time, it struck me so hard and was really heavy on my life. And so I came back, and I just thought, like, there's a bigger world outside. And I got the opportunity later on. I was at a convention somewhere, and they said, we're looking for people to come and spend the summer training and then go over to Thailand. I was like, oh, that's far. The furthest I've been is Toronto. I've never even been on a plane before. How is this going to work?
Wow.
And I just did it. And it was an incredible experience. And I think that kind of broke through any type of boundary that I'd ever put on myself living in this small community. Yeah. And I guess from there, it kind of changed the entire course of what I wanted my life to be like. And so it brought me here. Wow. So yeah, those were big things. But I always try and stay true to the fact that I am someone who is from a small community, because no matter what size city you live in, you always want to try and find that. Yeah. And there are things that I learned there that I still carry very much throughout my life. One of the things is you never know when company is going to come over. So you always have to have like extra food just in case.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that's something that I always try to, anytime anyone comes over to my house, the first thing I want to do is feed them or, prepare something. And that just never left me from that small community mentality. And also just, trying to be friendly with the people that you're in constant interaction with. Mm-hmm. So no matter where I move to, even in a place like Toronto, I love the feeling of going in and meeting people and having conversations with them, so that when I'm walking home from work, I'm waving to people in the windows as I go by, because that's what we do in Bathurst. Mm-hmm. So
yeah. So like I was actually going to ask that, like, it's almost like there was a small community in Bathurst, and I mean, I'm sure there's some, similarities, but it's almost like a stark difference going from like a small community like that to like not even just any city, but like Toronto of all cities. Yeah. So like, how was that? Like, I mean, like you said that there was community and closeness of people because it was a small town. And coming to Toronto, you know, having your own place, your family's not here. How was that experience like?
Well, it's exciting at first because there's so much around you. I remember driving into Toronto for the first time, and where I'm from, the sky is always lit up with stars. But when I hit Toronto, the sky was just billboards and lights,
Yeah.
and I found it so fascinating. I've never seen something like this before. I think there's like all of 3 billboards in the entire city of Bathurst. So seeing like billboard after billboard and lights everywhere in these buildings, it was so fascinating to me. And people always talk about, you know, oh, I wish I could see the stars. And I was like, the stars? It's like in the sky every single night. I don't understand. Like, you guys have this. It's so interesting. So it really overwhelmed your senses. And I was constantly reading signs and wondering where I was going and trying to navigate. And it was difficult to try and adjust to things like transit, because where I'm from, you drive your car or your tractor somewhere. So you never had to learn. That's what the traffic here the traffic where I'm from is like, if you get stuck behind like a tractor,
You're there for like 2 hours.
Yeah. It's like, oh, this is taking forever. When is this guy going to pull off? But here it's, you know, traffic.
Yeah.
And so it's a little different to adjust to. But I remember living on my own for the first time was very difficult because you get lonely. You really do. I remember one time I used to live in a basement apartment. You have to go down the side stairs. And I remember it was icy or something, and I fell. I had a really bad fall. Wow. Yeah, and I ended up like almost breaking my ankle. And I remember being there and at the bottom of the stairs and just being like, I'm in a lot of pain right now, but I can't think of a single person that I could call right now to come and help me. Yeah. And not that I didn't have friends that I had made, but it was later at night, and it's like, do I feel really comfortable saying like, hey, do you want to come and pick me up off the stairs? I may freeze to death down here, but because
you knew in Bathurst you could probably just call someone down the road, right?
Call
but
anybody.
Here, it's like
you could yell, and your neighbor would be like, "What?"
Yeah.
So it was, your neighbors were closer by. You could call out to anybody. It wouldn't be a problem, and someone would be there for you right away. And I just remember thinking in that moment, like, I have nobody to call, so I have to really suck it up and rely on myself. I've got to pull myself together, and I've got to. You know, when you find a new strength inside yourself that you didn't realize you had before. And same thing, like when you're sick, you know, mom isn't going to go to the store and get you stuff, right?
Convicted.
Yeah. But you kind of just say like, no, I'm an adult now. It was the biggest growing up experience that I could have put myself through. Yeah. Because I could not rely on anybody else except my own strength and my own help. And it also taught me a lot with my relationship with God, because in the loneliest of moments, it's really easy to just get down on yourself. But man, my relationship with God grew so much through that. Just knowing that, okay, I may not have a person physically to rely on right now, but I know that He is my strength. He is my companion. Facts. Yeah. So it helped me grow and mature, but it also really helped me grow in my relationship with God. And then He brought people to me that I could trust, that I could grow in relationship and community with. Yeah. And that was awesome for me. So it was a good experience now that I look back on it, but man, painful and lonely as I went through it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I can imagine, for instance, for me, like I have a ton of family here, and if I needed help with something, like you said, your lifelines are there. But I know living on your own, having to budget, having to, buy your own groceries, having to save money for the things that you want to do, paying down student loans, all that kind of stuff. We always talk about how you're someone who's frugal. So how, why is that your thing? Like, why do you want to make sure that,
Yeah, well, actually, when I was about 12 years old, my parents ended up separating. And I went from a 2-parent, 2-income household to a single-parent household. It was just my mom, myself, and my sister. So we really had to be frugal. My mother always taught me, like, if you wanted those clothes, if you wanted to look a certain way, or if you wanted to go out with your friends and stuff, I don't have the money for that, so you're gonna have to go and work for it yourself. And it gave you a new appreciation of how you spend your money. And when I went away to college, that kind of went with me, the fact that my mother really instilled that in me. And there were times too that my father couldn't couldn't contribute child support at all. And it's like, okay, we have got so much money that we have to live on this month, and we've got to buy groceries, and I'm just thinking to myself, okay, like, how am I going to stretch $25 into a month worth of groceries? But I did. And you learn that, rice is cheap and your best friend if you want to fill your stomach, and hot dogs are the college way to go, and things like that.
Mr. Noodle.
Yeah, Mr. Noodles. And if you want a vegetable in there, cucumbers are great, and, cheap bag of carrots. So it taught me, it wasn't that I didn't want to go and spend that kind of money, but it taught me that this is all you've got. So you've got to learn to live within that. Yeah. And it kind of carried through, because when I started getting a steady paycheck and I got a job and I got established and on my feet, just because you get a pay increase doesn't mean that you should necessarily change that kind of mentality. And I also realized that although I'm frugal with some things, it's because I want to do other things. So like you said, I really like to travel. I like to do missions. I like to see places. That is expensive. It's not cheap to do. Yeah. And so where are my priorities going to lie? Do I want to pursue my passions? Do I want to pursue my goals in life? Or do I want more data on my phone? Or do I want to splurge and do
That's
that?
So true.
Yeah. And do I need a ton of clothes?
Yeah.
Do I really need a ton of, who do I see every day? I work at a church. Like if I wore something twice in a row, no one's going to notice. So it was kind of that the choices that I started making, and it all started just coming from a single parent household, teaching me how to really pick and choose what's important and where I'm going to spend my money. Yeah. And so that kind of really carried throughout my life. And I try and teach other people too, because the worst thing you can get into is a ton of debt. Yeah. It's the new form of slavery, really. Wow. You're still like paying constantly. You're paying back. Your money is never your own when you're in debt. It belongs to somebody else. And that is not something that you want to live under. So there are things like I did not have the means, and my parents didn't have the means to give me all the money for college. Yeah. So I had to take out a student loan. And that student loan, like every time I get my statement, is like a punch to the gut.
I have my own struggles with student loans. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there are great programs available. But the thing is it's on me. It's on me to get a job, to go out there, because I went to school not on my own money. I went on the government's money. That money is not mine. It belongs to the government. So living under that is just something I don't want to live under. Yeah. At all. And I think that's why. So it's like, I don't want to live under debt, but at the same time, I really want to pursue the things that I want to do in life. And I just have to make choices, because I'm not a millionaire.
I love that mindset though, because like you hit it right there. You said, do I want to use my money to do something that I really want, or do I want more data on my phone? Right. And it's so true. It's like with overdraft and credit cards, and like even some of the young people I counsel as a youth worker, like they're like, oh, well, I have to get this Nike tracksuit. And I'm like, you don't have to. Yeah. You want to. Like, what's your needs? Transit is your need. You need to get to your job. You need to have some food. If you're staying in a basement apartment, you got to have some rent. But I like that your motivation, you're future proofing your money. You're not saying that it's for the here and now, but there's a purpose, because a lot of times money is very individualistic. It's like, I want to use money for myself or to do my own things, but you're thinking even like, I mean, obviously like you do your own things, like you want to go on trips, but you think like how you can bless other people, or even how like, course, how you can use it to, for a purpose other than yourself. Right.
Oh, of course. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I do want to you did touch a bit about, your parents and stuff like that. I want to get into that a little bit later, but kind of what I wanted to talk about was, so just before you went to Bible college, you were in high school. So what high school did you go to in Bathurst?
I went to Bathurst High School, BHS.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very simple.
Yeah. It's that small that the high school is called Bath. Is there only like one high school there?
There are two high schools. Okay. But the Bathurst High School was the English one. Yeah. And then there's a French high school. Yeah. So they were like École Secondaire Nipisiquit, so ESN. What? Yeah, I know. So Google Translate. So it basically just translates into Nipisiquit Secondary School.
Oh, okay. So,
yeah, there were two schools, the French school and the English school. So I went to the English school.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But you seem to know French. You learned French. Like, is it a common? Is it like more common than how people speak dual languages here? Or?
Yeah, the majority of the the city is either bilingual or they speak a lot of French.
Wow.
Yeah, and if you want to get employed there, you have to know both languages.
Yeah.
So they teach both languages in both schools. It's just the majority of the subjects that I went to are taught in English as opposed to French.
Yeah.
So if you go to a French school, like everything almost is taught in French, like your science, your social studies, your math and stuff. So where I went to, that a lot of that was provided in English, and then we had other French courses that we would take.
Yeah.
So it's it almost created a bit of a divide though. And I wish it didn't, because it was a sore spot in our city. It was the division between the two, because we both had two hockey teams.
Yeah.
And the hockey teams were like big time rivals and, like the volleyball teams. And it's just like, oh, we're facing ESN. Everybody come out. And we're gonna, BHS Pride. And I was like, it's sports. I like sports. Let's just enjoy it. But it created a bit of like tension there. So that was a hard thing to deal with sometimes. I remember there being like really aggressive fights taking place just because like one side was English, one side was French, and I was like, we're in one of the smallest communities in Canada. How is this happening?
Yeah.
Are you that bored, guys? Come on.
So one thing I always like to ask on the show is if you could go back in time, what would you tell grade 9 Carrie Lee Daley just about to enter high school? If you could warn her, or kind of like, after going through your life now, like what would you say to her?
Oh, grade 9 was a bit of a difficult year too, because it's close to it was just a couple years and my parents were still on the rocks. But I would just let her know that high school is going to be a good experience. I had a really good experience in high school. Don't be afraid of meeting new people. New people aren't scary. It's when you go from when you're in a small community too, the small group of friends that you have are very important to you. And one of the hardest things is being like, oh, we're separating classes now. I'm not going to be in the same classes as my friends, and it's always a very scary thing. But I'd just be like, don't be scared of people. People are okay. There are other people outside of your little sphere, and you're going to grow into that. Don't be afraid to use your voice and say hi to people and connect with them. I think I was just terrified of people at that point. So other people, they're gonna like me.
So after high school, you went to Master's College and Seminary for Bible college. So before we kind of get into that experience, like what caused you to just decide you wanted? Did you know you were going to become a pastor, or did you know you wanted to go to Bible school? Like, how did you know you were going to go there? And then how did you know that Master's was the college you wanted to go to?
Right. So I really wanted to be a lawyer, actually.
Oh, wow.
So I really did. And I think there's a couple of things that changed. Becoming a Christian was one of them. I became a Christian in high school, and that kind of changed the path of my life a bit as well. And also I think too, just going on a missions trip to Thailand and realizing I want to do something with my life that helps people. And I can help them in a lot of different ways. But I know that people need they need food, they need water, but they also need emotional healing. They need spiritual healing sometimes. They need so much more than just one area. And I felt that the church offers a lot of those things. They offer, food to the poor. They offer counseling, and they also majorly offer the spiritual healing as well. And so I really wanted to look into that. So I remember calling my mom from Thailand saying, like, can you please fill out the paperwork to send me to Bible college?
Oh, wow.
So she was going through all of that stuff. And when I came back from Thailand, it was, I've got like a little bit of downtime, got to pack my bags, and I'm moving.
Wow.
I'm moving to go in to pursue that. And I wanted to specifically go to a place like Toronto and the greater Toronto area, because I wanted to focus more, not just on like one cultural group, but multiple cultural groups. Going from rural Canada to a place like Bangkok, Thailand was the biggest culture shock I've ever experienced in my life. Like, I thought going to Toronto was a culture shock, but no, going to Thailand was a major culture shock. So, but it also really intrigued me. There are people that live in this world that completely, I had no idea about this stuff, and I wanted to learn more. So I wanted to go to a school that I knew was going to expose me to multiple cultures and multiple languages and multiple foods and like all of these different types of people. And the greatest place to do that was in the Toronto area. There are other great, wonderful Bible colleges out there, But my main purpose for coming to the GTA was that I want that exposure. I want to be able to, you know, walk down the street and see a whole wonderful like plethora of cultural groups out there. Yeah. And I want to see what they do, how they think, how they eat. I want to talk with them, engage with them, and learn from them. So that was the main reason why I decided to come.
Yeah. So like when you were, so I guess you had done some research before Thailand about master's college, or because you just you told your mom to fill out the paperwork, like because I know like a lot of young people that I counsel, like they got accepted into 4 programs, they don't know which one to choose, and you know I tell them that they're, you know, weigh the pros and cons. There's maybe one might have a better theoretical aspect, but one might have a placement that you might be more supplemental to what you're trying to learn. So like, how did you decide masters was that college?
Quite a few people I knew had gone to masters. Okay. My best friend actually went the first year, and but we took a little bit of a different path. I did more ministry focused stuff, and then did a lot more online courses with a few like in-class courses, where she focused majorly on being on campus and being in the courses and stuff. So we took 2 different directions, but she did go there, and quite a few of my friends had gone and taken classes from there before. Also, when you're from the East Coast, there are only so many Bible colleges you're aware of. Yeah. And I think the other ones, there's like one all the way out in BC, and I'm thinking,
you're going like all the way over.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm from New Brunswick, BC. I was like, I ain't coming home for Christmas then, because it's way too far away. So it just was a good fit for me, and that's where I felt to go. I'd received other confirmations as well from people when I told them like, this is what I want to do. Yeah. They would confirm it, and they said, yeah, I think you should be doing that. I definitely think, you know, that is something you should pursue in your life. And it's not that I don't think I'd ever go back to school for something different. Yeah. But it really helped solidify some things about my theology, about how I do ministry, and having the opportunity to do ministry in a city, whereas I'd never done that before. I'd always been, you know, this is how we do it out in the country, or this is how we do it in my city. Well, now I'm being exposed to, well, this is how we do it in a city setting. And it was a really good contrast for me to learn. Yeah. So
you mentioned something that I think a lot of, Christians, non-Christians, but like especially Christians in the church who, you know, they've become on fire for God. They've had an encounter with God. Maybe it's the first, maybe it's one that's kind of just setting the precedent for the rest of, you know, their walk. And then they feel like, you know, maybe I'm called to be in ministry. Maybe I'm called to go to Bible college. Like, because I don't know that it's always that we hear the audible voice of God, but sometimes if we talk with men and women of God who have, you know, relationship with God, that, you know, they're confirming things like that. Right. So like, what would you say to someone like that, you know, is considering that, to kind of be able to confirm if that's for them?
So, you really have to know. And I think we also have to understand the fact too that ministry looks completely different in different ways for different people. That you don't have to be a pastor to necessarily be in a ministry. Yeah, that's true. And for some people, it's their fit. They're really good at teaching the word of God. They feel the undeniable pull to the pulpit, where they want to engage with people that way. They want to be with people one-on-one. Their whole life is just surrounded that way. And it's because God has put something inside of them and has called them forth to do something specifically like that. Yeah. And they have the giftings. You think that you're completely unqualified when you walk into these situations, and yet for some reason the giftings and the skills seem to develop. And I think that people always kind of weighing like, should I, shouldn't I? You really need to get alone with God and see if this is what he's calling you out to do. Yeah. And then also to say, okay, God, I want to do ministry, but I'm passionate about filmmaking, or I'm passionate about politics, or I'm passionate about law, or, well, that's great. Go into those places and work with the ethics and the morals that God has given us, and be a minister of the gospel in every single area. Yeah. It doesn't mean that you're called to ministry just to be a pastor to preach Sunday after Sunday. Yeah. You could be a minister of the gospel in whatever you want to do. If you're passionate about doing like being a hairdresser, we'll do that to the glory of God. Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah, that's true. You know? Yeah, I had a talk with Pastor Q once, because I experienced that myself, and I'm like, a lot of people have told me over the years, like, I feel like you should be a pastor or this, and Pastor Q said it this way. He said, I think, if that's what you feel called to do, yeah, then go ahead with it. But he's like, sometimes what I like to do is I like to knock on the door, and then I'll push it. And if the door opens easily, then, I feel like at peace to go through that. But if I'm trying to force it and it's not working out, then I know. But he's like, still knock on the door. But he said, there's so many pastors. Like, it's all like there's so many pastors everywhere. And it's not that God doesn't need you to be a pastor, but like God can use so many people. Like, have you ever thought, like, because he knew I was into politics, what do you not think that God needs godly men in politics? Or when I wanted to be a police officer, do you don't think God needs godly men in the police force? So it's so true. It changed my mind from just being like, you don't have to just be a pastor to carry out the purpose that God has in your life, and also to be in the Word and to serve people. Like, for instance, my mom always says that she's like, her ministry is like what she does in the community. Like, and obviously, like, we have our times when we serve in the church, and we're connected to a local body, but she says one of her biggest purposes is just to help like the needy, the homeless, wherever we go, right? So,
and I encourage that, because to be honest, in working in a church, you think like, oh, I'm going to go work in a church, I'm going to make such an impact, I'm going to be in the community, and you don't realize that like half of your time is just spent like answering phones and opening mail and folding bulletins. There's so much administrational stuff.
It's glamorized, but
and then you're like, oh my goodness. And I remember looking at my youth pastor being like, oh, being a youth pastor would be so cool. And then you realize that a youth pastor is praying for people at the altar and listening to people and their most their most vulnerable moments, and helping counsel them through that, and helping them and seeing them go through breakthroughs. But you're also the person that's the last one to go to sleep, the first one to wake up in the morning, the one that unclogs the toilets, the one that helps when a girl is having a meltdown, or helps, or is looking for like a couple that has run off into the woods. Like, that's your job. and it's like, wow, I thought this was a really cool job.
Yeah. So like we mentioned, you went to master's college and seminary. So for those who are going into Bible college or considering it, like, can you like debunk some myths of Bible college? Like, is it like Oceans is playing in the background like every single second, and like you're slain in the spirit, and like you're super close to, like, how was that experience?
Well, it's definitely a different kind of atmosphere, definitely, because God is very central focused. However, you do have an academic process that you have to go through, and we get just as stressed as other people do when it comes to exams and things. I think one of the biggest things that bothered me the most when I went to Bible college was that people think that everyone there already have they've got it all figured out. And they don't. A lot of people dropped out. There are a lot of people, like I know one of my friends, he showed up and he was still like buzzed from the night before. Like, it was, I think like during orientation, he was like, yeah, pretty sure I was high for most of that. And I'm thinking, you're in Bible college.
Wow. Yeah.
You know what though? God got a hold of his life. He's an incredible pastor now. So it's like, we don't have, sometimes people don't have it all together. But the other thing too is that some people go to Bible college to get it all together, and that's not the place to do it. That's really not the place to do it. And the other myth I think that's out there, and people would joke about it, is that they refer to Bible college as bridal college.
Finding your spouse.
And the when I said like, oh yeah, I'm going to Bible college, people are like, oh, so you're going to go find a husband? I was like, no, I'm going because I want to go into ministry. They're like, and find a husband? No. Okay. And I even in our yearbook, they had a page that was like bridal college rebels, and it was like all the people graduating that hadn't gotten married yet, and there's like my picture like very enlarged on the page. Wow. And I'm thinking, is this a compliment, or is this like a major insult to me? I don't know.
Oh my God.
But I almost felt proud of the fact that, I wanted to go, and I didn't want to focus on that area. If God brought it out, then that'd be great. But at the same time, I'm there because I want to go into ministry, and this is supposed to help get me there. And I think though that a lot of times you learn ministry not so much from a book, you learn it from experience. And so I learned a lot of knowledge and theology while I was there, but the bulk of what I've learned about doing ministry has come from actually firsthand doing ministry and making mistakes, and being under a leader that understands that I make mistakes and is there to help me grow through that, and to kind of give me, a metaphoric kick in the pants when I need it, and also to be a person that can console. And so that was, you don't go to Bible college and come out thinking, you might think you know everything and you're ready to go into ministry. But the truth is that you've got a lot of head knowledge, and now you've got to learn how to do other things as well. You've got to learn that, hey, there's administration. Hey, there's real life issues, and your counseling class did not prepare you fully for. And there are celebration times that you're going to love, and they're a lot of times where you're going to be lonely and you're going to be almost depressed in what you do, and you feel like you're not accomplishing anything, and how to turn that around. So Bible college is definitely it's a bit of a bubble too when you're in it, and but you kind of learn once you graduate what the real world is all about, what the real world of ministry actually looks like. So
because one thing that I've done my undergrad, then I've done my master's, and one thing that I wish I would have had the opportunity to do was to do like a real world placement, to get that real world experience. So did you get that, like not just your mission trips, but did you get to like work in a church or do a placement or something where you're out in the field?
Right. Well, my I would get summer jobs at churches, and so that really kind of helped. I worked at my church back in Bathurst, but I also worked at other churches, big churches, small churches, which was really helpful, kind of getting that firsthand experience. But a lot of jobs you're doing there are like runner jobs, or like go clean out the storage room, which is a ministry all in itself. But there are only so many like dead rodents you can like sweep away. But God teaches you things through that. But my internship, where you kind of do like an exchange, because I was in the cross-cultural department, they sent me to Romania. And so that was a completely different thing, where I had multiple different types of ministries that I have never done before. And but it really teaches you firsthand what it means to deal with people from a different cultural background, to deal with people who are in poverty, to deal with people who are dealing with issues that you couldn't even imagine, and also ministry within a community, and just not just what you do in the church, but also what you do out on the streets. So that was a really stretching and growing experience for me as well, and it taught me a lot. It also taught me, I was again, if it wasn't for my experience of moving to Toronto, I don't know if I could have made it through Romania, because again, I'm moving from what I've known to a place where I know nobody. I don't speak the language. I don't know the transit system. And it's a very isolating experience. And you have to learn, like, okay, I'm going to get up in the morning and I'm going to pray that God, you're going to be with me today. And if I get lost, you need help. Like send me someone. Or, you know, so.
I remember stories you were telling me about, Romania, like even, I think you were volunteering at an orphanage, no?
Yes.
Yeah. So like, why don't you talk a bit about that? Because I remember you were telling me like, a lot of those babies are just like abandoned. They just need love, and just like even like the standard of care is so different than what we're we're accustomed
and
to.
And it may have changed since I've been there. But when I was there, I worked in two different places. I worked in a hospital, which dealt the wing that I was in dealt specifically with abandoned children, like babies that were just dropped off at the hospital and left there. And then I also worked in an orphanage that dealt with children who have special needs. And you're right, it's a completely different level of childcare. They're completely understaffed, and I don't know if the staff fully are aware of all the things that they can do to help develop the child. So I would go in there, and it would be like rooms upon rooms of just babies, and they're all there crying, and no one's there to like pick them up, console them. Feeding time is just kind of like prop a blanket, stick a bottle in, and like move to the next one, and then come around. It's just very basic care. But if you know anything about children, like their major moments of development are happening. They need color, they need light, they need all of this kind of stuff to stimulate that. And what's happening is now these children are being brought up this way, and when they can't keep up with regular kids, they're automatically deemed handicapped, or like they're just seen as, oh, they're mentally deficient, or something's wrong with them. And it's That's like crazy. No, a lot of stuff could have been corrected if they had dealt with it earlier in life. And so the thing is I'm not a physical therapist. I have no ECE training or anything like that. So you go in, and your job is to just basically help the staff that's already there, help change diapers, or help feed, or help put new clothes on. And the kids that I dealt with specifically were ones that were right around walking age. So just like trying to get them to learn how to walk, because they're in cribs
Like
all day.
no one's even putting
there
that
to help them.
effort or time.
Yeah,
Wow,
so
that
they're
sucks.
pulling themselves up on their own. So it's
Oh my gosh.
heartbreaking. And
Yeah.
then seeing kids with special needs in an orphanage, it was just also really heartbreaking. A lot of them, and the thing is what we would deem, completely able to get along in society, like can go get a job, can go do things with their lives. They just did not see that. So there's one kid I worked with who was blind, and I'm thinking, you could have a normal life.
Yeah.
In our society, people are blind and they get along fine.
Yeah, it's true.
They get jobs and stuff, but to them that was like, no, you're here, you're in a crib. If you go anywhere, you might get hurt. And so it was really hard to kind of, okay, now how do I work with a kid like that?
Yeah.
How do I stimulate things? How do I teach them how to do stuff? And another little girl I worked with, just like her feet just stuck out. Like it would have been corrected with physical therapy, but again, labeled. And it was, to me too, I'm thinking, how do I let these kids know that they are loved and that God loves them? Like, what am I supposed to, like, I can hold them, I can sing to them, I can smile at them, encourage them to walk, encourage them in themselves, letting them know that they're valuable all of the time. But like, what can I actually do for these kids? And it was really hard, because unless the system changes, that what you're doing is just a Band-Aid solution. And so it was just very heartbreaking. So heartbreaking to go in and come out every single day. And it really left a huge impact on me, because even when I came back to Canada, I'm almost like disgusted with the way that we see the world. Because I'm thinking, there are real people with real needs out there, and we're complaining about such small things.
First world problems.
Yeah, exactly. First world problems. And I almost became angry with our culture because of that. And it took a while to kind of integrate myself back into, well, this is the way that we do things. This is how our society is. And again, unless society changes, me ranting about how spoiled we are is just a Band-Aid solution. So no matter what, it's like, am I actually doing anything? And then you realize, when you speak to an individual in such a loving way, that's a difference. That's, they may never remember me, but for that small time frame that I had with them, they got to know that they were valuable, that they were loved, that they could grow to be somebody and to accomplish something. And so that is what I hope stays with them. And even if they can't remember my face or my name, just knowing that was spoken into them was important. That's the only way that I could probably sleep at night too. So
we kind of talked about that yesterday. It's just like, I think when you see an overwhelming, need in an area, you're just like, I want to save everyone. I want to help. Like when I first started being a youth worker, I came into the job thinking, oh, I'm gonna make a difference and change these kids' lives. And I'm like, I learned quick that just to get like that guard down off some kids it took like months, even still like years. And I'm like, if that's my motivation to be like, I'm gonna do this, as opposed to maybe it's I spend 3 weeks with this one kid and nothing happens, but on week 4 he goes, hey, can I talk to you about something? And I'm working towards developing those relationships, but those are still valuable, just like, I think even in my field, it's like you get the over sensationalized things from movies, like they go meet the coach, or they go and they're like, wow, you had such a difference. And I think I also have to check myself and be like, that's not my reason for doing it. My reason is to help them, not so I can feel intrinsically great about what I do, right? But I like what you said there too. It's even though you feel like it's a Band-Aid solution, like what you would have done for that one kid, even holding them, teaching them how to walk, that has like lasting effects on their life that they would have never gotten. And even though you wish you could have done that to every kid, that was still important. It wasn't for a loss, right?
And I was like in my early 20s too. It's like I did not have all the answers for the world. I just had, working with people that would say, this is what you're coming here to do, so just do it. I was like, okay. Who might argue with you?
Oh man. So you before you became a pastor, I asked you to list all the stuff that you did. So you went from babysitting to dressing up as a bunny mascot during Easter, to a wedding singer, to working at a call center, to working to doing data entry for a forest company. So like, how did you go from that to becoming a pastor?
Work is work. You just pick it up wherever you can. I guess it's just you feel the call of ministry in a different way, and all of those jobs along the way taught me something about myself and taught me about interacting with new people and different work environments. So working at a call center is a very different environment, and the people that are there are very different. And the Easter Bunny, no one knew who I was. So, but it was the easiest job in the world. I just took pictures with kids when, you bring your kid to the mall and stuff. Like, I was the person inside the suit. So it paid really well. So it was great. Nice. But a job is a job. Yeah. And you know what else it taught me too? If I ever had to go work at a church and they're like, hey, so we can't pay you that much. We can maybe give you a place to live and that's about it. Yeah. It's like, all right, well, I've got to go out and find a job then to support myself.
That's true.
It's good to have different experiences along the way. Like I can do data entry. I know how to use all the computer programs. I'm familiar with technology. I will dress up in the most ridiculous suit you want me to and take pictures with children who are overjoyed that I'm giving them a chocolate egg. So it doesn't matter what you do as long as you do it to the best of your ability and you're working hard to make means. Yeah. And ministry doesn't always happen where you get a steady paycheck. And thank God I've been blessed with a place that has been able to provide for me. Yeah. And do that. And I'm so grateful to the congregation for being able to do that. Yeah. But at the same time, if I get called to another place, there might not be that stability there. Yeah. And I just have to do what I got to do.
Yeah. Two things that comes to mind when we're talking about that is, your 9 to 5 doesn't have to be your calling or your purpose. Yeah. Like your purpose, I'm not saying that you can't do anything, purposeful, but, I used to just because of the nature of my job, I used to leverage. I'm like, oh, this is my mission field in a ministry. And I'm, but I'm like, I had to realize too, like I still have to work within a policy and a structure and an organizational vision. And I can't, overstep and say, well, we need to do this because it's going to change. Like, no, we have some certain guidelines and we also have certain directives that are outside of what you individually want to do. And two is, I seen something the other day that said, your organization can't afford your actual worth because you're multifaceted as an individual, what you can offer. Like, obviously, like this podcast is something that why I wanted to start it too is just I have other skill sets beyond my job that I just want to express. So this is I'm obviously not getting paid for this. If someone wants to sponsor me, reach out to me. But no, I'm not getting paid for this. That wasn't
How many
my
plugs is that now?
I know, right? That wasn't my motivation. But I'm just saying, like I love my job, but at the end of the day too, like it's helping me pay my bills. It's helping me pay my student loan, and my passions don't always have to be in my 9 to 5, right?
Exactly.
So yeah. So I kind of wanted to touch on like how like, and I'm not trying to like say this in a bad way, but like how has it been being a female pastor in a space that was historically always dominated by men or seen as like a male driven field? You know what I mean?
It's been, I'll be honest with you, in the environment that I've been working in for the past 10 years, it's been great. Yeah. I think that the church that I work with not only supports me as a minister, but very much supports that I'm a female minister. And they're proud of that. Yeah. And if anyone would ever say anything or has said anything against that, they're the first ones to step up to my defense. Wow. That being said, not every female in ministry has had that. Yeah. I'm very blessed with a senior pastor that wants to share his pulpit, that wants me to, he's like, I got to give you more opportunities to preach and to teach, and wants to push me out there, wants me to grow, wants me to develop, and isn't threatened in any way whatsoever. But he sees it as his purpose as a lead pastor to grow and to help disciple me along the way. I love that. I think it's incredible because it challenges me all of the time. And it also shows too that he doesn't see me because of my gender. He sees me as a minister of the gospel. And I really appreciate that. Yeah. But there have been the odd time where I'm the only woman in a room. And it's for a while, I was really quiet. I wouldn't speak up and say anything. And I think that was okay because I didn't want to come out as, the fighting female pastor. I wanted to be someone who quietly just served and quietly listened to what was going around and showed respect to people who were in authority over me. Yeah. And I wasn't perfect at it, but I took the opportunity to just take some time to observe. And then once people have gotten to know me, not just as, oh, the one female in the room,
Yeah.
the one young female, but a person who has been at her job and works hard and loves God and loves people. Then when I took the opportunity to stand up and speak, they weren't seeing a female pastor. They were just seeing a pastor, someone with a heart for God and a heart for people and a heart to see growth and good things happen through the church.
Yeah.
And your voice is so much louder then. Your influence is so much broader then. And it's not that the way that I did it is the way that you have to do it or the perfect way. I just think it's the way that I needed to do it at the time. And I also, being young as well, was more of a hindrance than anything else, because there a lot of times there's this huge gap in age.
Yeah.
And so here I am, young, single, and a woman, and it's like all of these things are working against me to actually have my voice heard or to think that I can come up with something. But I was, again, like, my board and my senior pastor have been incredibly supportive.
That's
They've
awesome.
let me grow and make mistakes. And even when I get really defensive, like, oh, but would you say this if I was a male? And it's just kind of like, we love you, we care about you for who you are and what your talents are. And guess what? You're not a male, you are a female, and that's a good thing. You bring something new, you bring something fresh, you bring something that we can't bring to the table. Yeah. And so it really helped to kind of take that time just to grow as an individual and to listen to the people who have been doing this a lot longer than I have.
Yeah.
And do that. And I really, again, I think I got a really great deal, thanks God. And I didn't work in an environment that worked against me because of my gender, but actually really supported me. Yeah. So, and it's not that I don't get people that come up to me. Like, I have people that sometimes are like, well, you can't pray for me because you're a woman. I'm like, wow. All right. That's, or, maybe you should change the way that you dress. And I'm thinking you would not say this, Yeah. But at the same time, I realized that people are flawed, just as I am flawed. Yeah. People have grown up in a certain way, or things have been said to them to develop their worldview. Yeah. And it was opposite for me. I was never told that I couldn't do something because I was a woman. My mom was like, who cares if you're a woman? If you want to play baseball, go play baseball. Yeah. And they had no baseball league for women when I was a little girl. And then she's like, well, that's okay. They're going to make room for you in the baseball league. So I was taught that was never going to be a hindrance in my life. So I went into the world thinking that, and then I encountered people that thought differently. And to me, that was, whoa, I never thought that would happen. Yeah. But now I just kind of understand, like, people, hopefully they grow. Hopefully God teaches them something new, but I don't do this for you, for your approval. I do this because I believe this is what God has called me to do. Yeah. And if I honor God, then man will recognize that. And so I think that's one of the greatest things about being a woman in ministry, is that people can say you can't do certain things. And then you say, but I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength, no matter what my gender is. Yeah, it's He who strengthens me. Definitely. So, definitely. Yeah.
So can you kind of take our viewers through, like, your process of preparing for a sermon? Like, is it something that you just wing, or like, you I'm a huge procrastinator, so I'm writing essays like the night before, but like, what does that look like for you?
It can be very different. It could be I'm doing my own personal devotions and something really jumps out at me and I want to expand upon it. Yeah. It could be as well, we're going through a series, so I've got the topic ahead of time, and
so you're more focused on
that. And I have some research that I can do on it and things like that. There's also moments where you just really got to say, God, what does our congregation need to hear? Do they need to be encouraged today? Do they need to be convicted about something today? Do they need to be challenged to move, to be do they need to be motivated? Like, where, like, what do they need? Some basics? Do they need to know a little bit more about your word and what you're trying to say to them? So you kind of have to gauge where your congregation is at. You always have to be aware of what's going on. And I personally really like when we do series, because then I don't have to think so much about it. It's, you're doing this topic this week, Kara. All right, we got this. But then once you kind of understand where you want to go or what you want to accomplish in that sermon, then there are multiple sermon styles that you can do. And you've got to feel with the passage of scripture that you're using what the best kind of delivery for that is. Yeah. And sometimes it's different. I really, really enjoy narrative. I like telling stories. I think people learn a lot through stories, and that's a way that I learn.
I'm that kind of person too.
Yeah. So I tell a lot of stories, or sometimes I like to structure the entire thing around a story. And it's sometimes really great, but a lot of times what you're doing is you're taking a ton of research, pages and pages and pages of it, and then you bring it down, like you slowly whittle away at it and say, draw out the points. There are entire courses in Bible college about how you do this, like how do you go and how do you find the original context of what the author is trying to say? Because again, the Bible is inspired by God, but it was written by everyday people. And about their experiences and how they experience life, how they experience life with God and each other. And okay, now I understand what they're trying to say, what they're trying to bring forth. Now, how do I take that and apply it to a context in the 2000s when this was, back in like Jesus's time, like early AD or BC? Like how does that apply? And what you realize is that people are people. They haven't changed very much.
The word of God is just as relevant then as it was today.
Right. And you look at books that are really old and philosophy books that are really old, and some of the topics they talked about are just as impactful today as they were back in those days, because humanity just cycles over and over and over again. And we think we learn from our mistakes, but a lot of times we learn from our mistakes and then we seem to be making the mistake over again. And so it's okay, how do I take this now and how do I bring it into a context where it's not so much about, dealing with your farm equipment as much as it's dealing in your workplace at, your 9 to 5. And so you kind of go through that process. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of times it just comes, it just flows like point after point after point. And I love alliteration. So all my points start with the same letter and I love it.
Oh, okay.
And then other times it doesn't flow like that. It's difficult. You have to work through it. And after it's done, you're like, does this even make sense? Is this going to actually impact people? And it's a lot of times is spent. I don't have laundry at my house, so I actually go to a laundromat. Yeah. And I'll put my laundry in and just put like my books and my notes all over the folding table and just read and highlight and make notes and write with my tablet next to me. And everyone is like, what is this girl doing? And I was like, it's okay, don't worry.
It's Toronto, it's hipster. Like you just have a cup of coffee and like on a laptop, and it's totally acceptable.
I don't go to coffee shops, so I go to the laundromat, which is like really, I feel like I can focus so much more.
But like anywhere, like you could just like hipster down anywhere. So but I've seen it a few times. I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but like you'll see a pastor gets up there and says after like worship and prayer, like, I had this message, but God is telling me to say something else. Like, have you ever had one of those experiences? And like, how do you you have to wing it, I guess, or like you call on maybe some stuff you've done before, or maybe God flows through you as you go. But
I think one time I was waiting on God for a really long time. And he gave it to me when I like Sunday morning. Wow. And it's not something you want to tell your senior pastor or your congregation. Like, it's not that I've procrastinated. I've just tried and nothing seemed to be working. And those moments are terrifying. Yeah. Because you realize that, again, you're not relying on your strength, you're relying on God's. Yep. And not only that, you're not being led by your own agenda, you're being led by the Holy Spirit's agenda. Yeah, that's powerful. And so you get up there and you're like, okay, the thing is that if you're a Christian, though, the word of God should be hidden in your heart. Like you should even if you can't come up with a reference right away, you should be able to know this is what God's word says. Yeah. And so when you start to bring a message forth or you start to read from the word of God and things start unveiling themselves to you over and over and over again. It's you realize too that you're going through an experience that a lot of the congregation is experiencing when they read the word of God. Yeah. When revelation comes to them. And so that's how I've treated that. It's terrifying though. When you get up there and your notes is like 3 sentences. Yeah. You're like, so God's in control here. Yeah. Can we extend the worship by like 3 more songs?
I know, it's true. Yeah. So was there, not related to just what we talked about, but like, was there ever a time in being a pastor that you said, God, I don't know if this is for me, or maybe it's not the right thing, or maybe I should just do something regular like everyone else?
Yeah. So like every Monday. So no, and you know what? We other pastors, we all joke about that kind of thing. Yeah. How like our resignation letters are like always in our desk drawer. Mine's not, by the way. I don't have a resignation letter. Wow. But but I think that's a lot of people wake up in the morning and they're just like, am I going to be this for the rest of my life? Am I going to be this?
That's true.
And it's just like any other job. You get into ruts. You feel like you're accomplishing nothing. And it's like, would this church actually, benefit more if I left? And there's that, and then there's another spiritual aspect as well, where you can feel like I'm getting nothing. I'm dry. I'm empty. Like I've been tapped out. And so is this going to impact my ministry? Is this going to, are people gonna notice that Kara's having an off month? Or and you wonder these things, but you keep going because you wait on God to do that. And I preached a message one time that really helped me through that. It was called When God is Silent. And there are moments that in the Bible where God didn't speak to his people. Yeah. And they just had to learn to trust that he was still there and he was still at work, and he was. Yeah. And that is something that I've carried a lot through my ministry. God, like, why aren't you speaking to me? Why isn't this happening? Am I still meant to be doing this? Or do you have a different plan for my life? And it's not to say that I want to throw away ministry, or sometimes it's just like, God, I just want to break. I just want to break. Can you just, lay on someone's heart to pay for me to go on sabbatical or something? I'm tired. Yeah. I'm tired. Definitely. And then you remember that, he is our strength. And then, you know what? God has a way too of providing in those moments words of encouragement that come from other people. And I think there have been so many moments where I've felt like, man, this is it. I'm done. I have nothing left to give. Wow. I think I don't know if I'm going to do this. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to be a graphic designer full time and go into marketing. And those are things that I like. And then I get a youth that comes up to me and says something like, your message last week just really impacted my life. Or, one of the seniors in our church that says, I love the way that you lead worship. There was one lady in our church, she just recently passed away, but in the moments where I felt like, man, worship was terrible today. I felt like nothing worked, and I just felt like a failure. And I was like, what am I even doing? I'm not even a professional musician. Like, how am I doing this? And then she would walk up to me and she just says, your worship blesses me so much. Wow. And it's like, okay, God, thank you so much for sending someone to let me know, to kind of like pat me on the back and let me know that what I'm doing is still honoring to you and still in obedience to you, and that people are still getting ministered to. Yeah. I know I've been in those moments where I'm like, same thing, or like even initiatives and whatever. And like we've talked about before, like sometimes you're looking for the recognition and the numbers, but sometimes God just sends that one person. Like, when I started that quotes page on Instagram, I started it because out of the overflow of what God was speaking to me. And then I thought that, why don't, some of the biggest times, I know it sounds super lame, but some of the biggest times in my life where like I just needed a word from God is I went on Instagram and I followed a few quotes pages and it said this, and I'm like, wow, I needed to see that. And then, I started doing it, and then I'm like, oh wow, a lot of people are engaging, and then it kind of just dropped off. And then I'm like, is this still something God wants me to do? And then God was just like, are you working for like, the 10,000 followers, or can you be faithful to these 10 followers? Right. And it's not about the numbers. And then like, one person would message me and say, hey, I was going through exams this month, and every day you posted something, and every day it encouraged me. And I'm like, I love when God does that. He just like, he puts it on someone's heart just to send that, or even just someone just letting you know. And it's so encouraging, because you realize that one person is just as important as the 1,000. Right? And you brought up something else too, like when you were talking about like the 10,000 followers and stuff, and what you're doing, and how you follow quotes pages. One of the dangers that you can get into in ministry, and my senior pastors told me about this over and over and over again, is you get into a comparison mode. Yep. Where you compare yourself to other people all the time. Yep. And for us as well, you're working in a smaller congregation in the downtown core. Yeah. And it's like you're comparing yourself to those big speakers in the States with like big congregations. Yep. And you're just like, why Elevation Church. Yeah. Yeah. Like, why, God, why doesn't my sermons look like that? Or why doesn't this response look like that? And you get caught in comparing yourself. And even as a younger pastor on staff, I find myself always trying to compare myself to my senior pastor, which isn't a bad thing. Yeah. But he would encourage me so much. He's like, God has given me the way that I do ministry and the way that I preach. Like, that's for me.
Yeah.
You are completely different, and God's going to speak and use you in a completely different way. And it's not that it's wrong, it's just different.
Yeah.
And your style might be different than my style, but your style may speak to someone that my style doesn't.
Yeah.
And so stop comparing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're not supposed to compare yourself to man. You're supposed to compare yourself to Jesus.
Wow.
So that can be applied in anything. Don't compare yourself to other people unless they're just people that you're like, oh wow, they're really spiritual. I want to be more spiritual. Like, use people as motivation, but not something to bring yourself down.
Yeah, it's so true. Like, you know, sometimes me and my mom have like our 4-hour conversations sometimes when I'm done work, and, you know, like even what I want to do, and then I'll be like this, and I think my mom said to me, she's like, you want someone else's calling. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, you want what a seasoned saint has. Like, you want to be this kind of person at 25-year-old when God is taking you through a step and a process. You want to just be like this amazing Christian, but like, you know, everyone has a unique calling, and God's taking people through different things, and he's trying to teach you, like, what might be a vice to me may not be a vice to someone else, and God's trying to refine me and to develop me and grow me. And like, even when I mentioned Elevation Church, like, there's this guy on Instagram that named Brady Shear, who he always talks about. He did a video of why your church shouldn't try to be like Elevation Church, because like, people don't realize, like, Elevation Church is like, I think it's in its 12th and 13th year. You're seeing at year 12, but you didn't see what they were like when they started in a home with just a few guitars and a band, and they were just a worship band that turned into a whole church, right? So it's like, even looking at the onset of people, like, I remember someone came to my mom one day after church and said, I love how you pray. I wish I could pray like that. And my mom was like, are you sure? Because you should know why I pray with that. God brought me to my knees many times in my life, so that it's not just like I'm just saying good words, but God's refined me even in my prayer life, because I was on my knees. You know, I was probably one of those reasons when I was in my ways and, you know, in relationships. But yeah, like, are you sure you want that? Because there's a cost to calling, right?
Yeah,
so true.
is.
Yeah. So what I kind of wanted to do was, you talked a bit about your parents and how you experienced them, you know, getting divorced, especially, you know, you were mentioning just before like grade 9 and stuff like that. So I do counsel a lot of youth who are in single parent homes, who don't have either parents, maybe living with grandparents. So like, how did you deal with that? And like, maybe some encouragement to people, not even just young people, but I mean, there's parents that have been together for 40 years, then they divorce. Like, how did you deal with that period in your life?
It was very difficult. The reasoning too for my parents' separation was that my father had an affair.
Oh, wow.
So that's an even bigger thing to kind of put on to a family. And he didn't want to end the affair. He continued on with it. And so I was around 12 when it all came out.
Wow.
And I think that too is a big factor, because it was a time in my life where I'm discovering who I am and what I want to do. And then all of a sudden, this world that I thought was okay, and I know it wasn't perfect, but, you know, it was my world, just seemed to completely dissipate. It was just gone. And my father like leaving the house, and my parents living separated, and my mom being a complete mess. And, you know, she did the best that she could, but she was going through her own emotions during that time. Yeah. And I remember being I had a very different reaction than my sister had. Yeah. I was very upset and I was very angry, but I also reflected inwards as well, thinking, you know, was I not enough that my dad had to go and find somebody else?
Wow. I think a lot of young people ask that same question.
Yeah. And it's also too, like, I remember my father telling me one time, he's like, you know, I still thought about you and I still love you. And I was like, yeah, but it wasn't enough to stop you. You know, and that it became like where I was angry at the world, but I was also angry at myself. I felt like I wasn't enough. Wow. I felt like, you know, if I had been smarter, and I was a straight A student, you know, if I had been better, if I had been prettier, what if I had just, you know, if I had been, maybe my dad wouldn't have, you know, and the thing is that none of that was my fault. Yeah. None of that had ever reflected onto me, but I was so angry with him because I felt as though you didn't love me enough and I wasn't enough for you in order to maintain this. Yeah. And as the older sibling as well, you know, my mom was really took it hard, to the point where she was just like crying every single day. And then I have my younger sister who's so confused about what's going on. She's only 2 years younger than me, but, you know, was young enough so that she was aware that something was wrong, but she didn't know how to fix it. And she just knew mom was crying, dad was somewhere else. And you take on the role now of, I've got to make sure that my sister gets her homework done. I've got to cook meals. And there's a lot of that period of time that was really difficult for me. My dad turned to had some pretty dark moments as well. And it was really, really difficult.
Yeah.
And I became extremely angry. Anger. And people that know me now probably would not know that I was a very angry, violent person. I mean, other than my Krav Maga stuff, but
the shovel incident.
Yeah.
We won't talk about that. It'll ruin her credibility.
Yeah. Well, siblings will be siblings. But, I just remember being really angry and very aggressive towards people, which was never me before. And it really broke my confidence in who I was. I stopped doing music. I stopped doing musicals and dramas and acting, and I just really withdrew from a lot of activities, and my grades dropped like crazy. And it was an impact of what was going on at home. And the thing is that it wasn't like a clean split either. It was in and out, always in and out, like parents back together, parents separated, parents back together,
that's rough.
Find them cheating again. Like
you get your hopes up and then they go back down.
And I just learned to not have hope.
Oh, wow.
And that was the thing. I was like, I'm just not going to, this is just going to end. I was never the optimist about this. Everyone's like, you know what? Pray your family will get back together. I was like, my family ain't getting back together, guys. Like, let's be very real about this.
Yeah.
And I took a very negative approach to everything. And it wasn't until I became a Christian that I found any type of joy in my life again. I'll be very honest. And a lot of people that can say, like, you don't know what I went through. And I was like, no, I know the very moment that I thought that dying in this world would be much better than living in it.
Wow.
And I completely understood that. And the only thing that gave me any type of sense of peace and joy again was when I understood my relationship with God and how much he loved me. Because my own father, I felt, didn't love me enough.
Wow.
And that I wasn't enough. But yet here you've got the word of God that says, it's not that you're not enough, but guess what? I did everything possible. I sent my only son. I shed blood for you. And that is what love actually looks like. And so you didn't get that in your childhood. I understand that. And I'm sorry that happened. But here I am willing to give that to you, to give you that love that's unconditional, that goes, and a peace that goes beyond understanding, and a joy that's unspeakable. And a lot of times you hear these testimonies from Christians about how, they got saved and after they had this terrible life, they were in all of these different addictions and stuff, and they got saved and life got better. I can honestly say that life did not get better. And in moments it actually got worse.
Wow.
But it was just the realization of, I'm not fighting this by myself anymore. I have some type of hope. I have something that I can look forward to. And I can honestly say too that God had a great way of bringing people into my life that really encouraged me and helped me through that. And I remember the night that I was actually thinking about killing myself.
Wow.
And this one of my friends reached out to me that night, and it was a midweek. Like, she asked me to come and work on something at her house, and then I could just sleep over. And we went to the same school together, so we could just go to school together. Yeah. And I was like, most parents don't let their kids go out on a sleepover on a school night. Yeah. For some reason it was okay. So, and that friend of mine, and she's actually a relative of mine, she's a Christian. And that's the night that she shared God's love for me. Oh, wow. And I was going through something with a guy I was seeing at the time, and it was really rough. And so we started talking about love and what love looks like. And she told me what love actually looked like. And that moment, it's like, I had gone to church before. I had understood what they tell you in Sunday school, that Jesus loves me. This I know. I've heard all the things. I've gone to Christmas. I've gone to Easter. But in that moment where I was completely hopeless and I thought that death was better than life, I realized that no, death is conquered by him, and he gives me life. Amen. And so it was a completely transformative moment. And it's not that my life got better, and it's not that I was magically changed overnight. I still had anger issues that I had to work on. I still had a relationship that I had to repair with my father. And I learned a lot of things along the way. And again, it's not to say that I now have the perfect relationship with my dad. I don't. Yeah. It's very difficult for me. It's very, very, very difficult. And I just have to remember that, just as much as I'm imperfect, he's imperfect as well, and kind of take it as I go, and just love him with the love that God has shown me. So now I show it to him. And I hope that, our relationship gets better over time. But, I'm in my 30s now, and this happened when I was 12. Yeah. And everyone thinks that, families, when they go through something like that, it's like a Disney movie. Like by the end of 2 hours, it all seems to repair itself. And it's like, no, these wounds are deep and they take time to heal.
Yeah.
And there are people who still struggle with it. But there was a moment in my life where I decided that I was no longer going to be a victim. I realized that I used the excuse of what happened to me as a child or what happened to me as a youth, and how I, but like, oh, you say that, but you didn't have a dad at home. Like, you say that, but you didn't want to kill yourself at one point, or you say that, but you weren't abused by a boyfriend. Like, there's all of these things that you can just say, like, well, I can excuse away the decisions I made in my life because I've been a victim. And there was a point in my life that was like, hey, I'm no longer a victim. I'm redeemed.
Wow.
And if I'm going to say that I'm a follower of Christ, I need to start living that way.
Yeah.
And so it's like, listen, it's not to say that people's pain isn't important. It is important, and God cares about it. In fact, he died because of that pain.
Yeah.
And it's not, though, because he wants us to remain that way. He wants us to be whole again.
Yeah.
And so I stopped using my victim mentality as an excuse for my behavior.
Wow.
And I started saying, no, I'm not a victim anymore. I'm gonna say I'm no longer defined as a girl with daddy issues. I am defined as a daughter of the living God.
Amen.
And I want to live that way. But not only that, I'm defined as someone who's gone to college when none of my other, when my family didn't get to go to college. I'm someone who's seen the world when, my family never got to see the world.
Yeah.
One of my family members commented on my Facebook one time when I posted a picture of the Eiffel Tower, like, oh, like, keep posting these pictures. I feel like I'm seeing the world from my living room. And I was like, go out of your living room and go see the world. You need, and I'm thinking, I'm not just that lonely kid in a closet anymore that's crying because her parents are fighting. I'm a fighter.
Wow.
And I'm victorious, and I'm living my life, and I'm going to live it to the fullest. I'm going to meet my goals. I'm going to go out and I'm going to see the world, and I'm going to do what God has called me to do, because that's who I am.
Yeah.
I'm no longer a victim. I am someone that is beyond that, and I've overcome it.
Wow.
And it's not to say that it doesn't creep its head every once in a while, then it doesn't come up when I feel insecure about something. It does. It's always going to be there. But it's also understanding that, and when I see it in the face, applying the word of God and applying my accomplishments and applying, the encouragement of other people to it, and forcing it out of my life again, and saying, nope, I'm not gonna see myself that way anymore.
Yeah.
I'm gonna see myself in a different light.
Yeah. And just so I guess to encourage other people going through it, like what you just described, that whole story was a process. Like it didn't happen overnight. Like you said, sometimes it got worse before it got better. But I think, one thing that's common throughout all your stories is that when God was in the center and God was constant, that, it was more easier to deal with, or you had that support. And even like my mom says it all the time, like even with the lack of fathers in her life, is she's like, I almost feel bad for people who have fathers in their life, because I've only seen God as a father in my life. And like God has been that for me. So my idea of a father is totally different, because sometimes people have their earthly fathers who, are great fathers, but sometimes it's like, for me, it's hard for me. It's hard for me to imagine God sometimes as a father, like, like the Shaq movie where God appears as like that, like a mom, or like, like that's what he needed to see. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, I know that the Bible always says it, but it's like, maybe your relationship or your understanding of God might be different, but yeah. So
I think it too is the importance of community, because even though my parents, their marriage didn't work out, it didn't mean that I didn't have other people that I looked up to, that they had a relationship that worked.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's great about the church as well, is that there are people that you can look up to, even if your own parents' marriage failed or something fell apart in your life. There are still other people out there that you can look up to.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid to spend time with them, to ask them questions, to have them kind of pour into you that way. Because one of my biggest fears was always, what if I end up like my parents? What if I end up with somebody that I can't trust, because I'm always worried if he's gonna cheat on me.
Yeah.
And I've actually intentionally spent time with married couples because of that.
Yeah.
Because I want to see what a healthy relationship looks like.
Yeah.
And that's important too. So to anyone who's like, thinks that the definition of marriage is their parents' definition of marriage, I would encourage them to go out and find healthy relationships and to see that.
Yeah. All right. So it's that time in the episode where we go to our rapid fire. So you know the rules. First thing that comes to your head, if you don't, if it's an either or and it's not that, just say something else. Okay. All right. Ready? Pepsi or Coke?
Coke.
If you're a Pepsi or Coke, like You know what type of person you are if you're either a Pepsi or Coke.
I'm
It
none right
says
now.
something about your character. I know.
I am none right
I know,
now.
but Coke. All right, cool. DC or Marvel?
Marvel.
Oh,
Yeah, I know.
All right. Best thing about being a pastor?
You get Mondays and Saturdays off.
Out of all the places you've traveled, your favorite place, local or international?
Ooh, that one's tough. I think they're all great for different reasons, but I'd have to say South Korea was my favorite.
Awesome. Favorite book you read or are reading now?
Oh shoot, and the Hunger Games don't count, right?
No, they can count. They can count.
Actually, I think it would be The Cost of Discipleship by Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Ooh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite food?
Oh, poutine.
Poutine.
Yeah, I'm not eating that now either.
Not
no,
poutine?
it's poutine. No,
It's poutine.
no, I'm not eating that now either, and it's hard, but I love poutine.
Favorite song right now that you've been listening to lately?
Oh, Hills and Valleys by Torn Wells.
That's a good song.
I love that song. Yeah.
Most influential person on your life?
On my life, I would have to say currently it's probably Pastor Quackenbush.
Wow.
But throughout my life, it would be my old youth pastor, Pastor Troy Matchett.
Awesome.
And my mom. I have to say my mom.
Yeah. So, all right. So if you could go back in a time machine to a single point in your life, what day would that be?
Oh wow. I think maybe the time I was on top of the Eiffel Tower.
Oh, nice.
I really loved that moment, and for me it was just a moment of look how far you've come.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If there was a documentary on your life, what would the title read?
One hot mess.
And what actor would they cast to play you if you weren't in it?
Oh,
Like your
the
celebrity.
documentary is usually, but you're in it. But
Oh no, but like you know how like they have the person and then they get like an actor to like play like the scenes,
yeah,
like in like a
I don't. Oh my goodness.
like your celebrity lookalike.
My celebrity. I don't think I have a celebrity lookalike, but I think Jennifer Lawrence would be really nice. I think she could really do a good me.
Yeah.
She's got the acting skills for it. So
If you could have coffee with anyone from any point in history, dead or alive, who would it be?
well, I think the Christian answer would be Jesus. But
Besides Jesus.
Yeah, I would actually have to say someone like Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He was an incredible person, and what he dealt with in life is something that I would really like to pick his brain about how he maintained his Christianity while still dealing with such a severe political situation in Germany.
Wow. If you were a superhero, what would your superpower be?
I'd really like to read minds.
Read minds.
Yeah, I think that would make
I
counseling
know.
people so much easier. It's like, I think I know what you mean, but let's stop skirting around the issue and let me just hear what you're trying to say. Yeah.
So when you die, what would your biggest legacy that you want to leave behind to be?
Just this person loved and helped as many people as she could, and they live on, doing what she's trying to do for other people as well. So it's like a ripple effect.
That's awesome. What show ended that you wish you had another season to watch?
There's so many seasons. Heroes would be one of them.
Okay.
Such a good, and they did come out with another season, but How I Met Your Mother too. I loved that show.
I heard a lot of people like
and
that.
I didn't like the way that it ended, so I was like, I want more.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So last one. I ask it on every episode. If your life was a book, what's the title of the current chapter of your life right now?
Love yourself, don't hate yourself. I've been going through a process where I'm trying to really get healthy, and that's from the foods that I eat to exercising more. And a lot of times people do it out of because they hate themselves, they hate the way they look, or they hate their body or anything. And I've made the choice that no, I do this because I love myself, I love who I am, and I've got goals and things that I want to do.
Yeah.
And so I want to do them, and I want to make sure that nothing, especially my own self and my loathing of myself, it stands in the way of that.
Yeah.
So it's a growing experience for me, just to love who I am and allow that to help change me.
Yeah, awesome. All right. So that ends our rapid fire. So what I like to do is, give our guests a time to either shout out anything they got going on, whether that's a social media, a business, a project, or if you wanted to give the viewers or listeners a word of encouragement or anything last thing that you wanted to say. So this is Guest Corner, so do your thing.
Okay. I don't have any social media to promote. I'm actually very private about my social media, but I do have to say this, that if you are someone who is in any way doesn't like to change things up in life, then I would encourage you to challenge yourself. Challenge yourself, because challenging yourself reveals more about yourself that you didn't know before, and it can help you change and grow. And I'd also like to say that don't be afraid to reach out and connect with people around you, because community is important. And I think if we all just spent more time doing that, the world would be a much, much better place. And also, if you are feeling any pain or you're feeling hopeless or anything, I would really encourage you to look to what the Bible has to say about how much God loves you and how much he cares about you, and find a community that surrounds you with that kind of hope as well, and that kind of joy and that kind of love. So you're not alone. You really aren't. And don't feel isolated, and don't isolate yourself, but challenge yourself to go out there and to meet with people and find an activity that helps you do that. Awesome. And push yourself out. Don't isolate yourself. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, just before we go, I like to give my guests a word of encouragement. And one thing that, just knowing you, not just from what you talked about today, but knowing you for a while, since you've been, a pastor at our church and just a friend to me, is that you really make the word of God understandable. And I think like people have this, idea of what the pastor should look like and what they should say. But like you said, I love your narratives. I love your stories. I love how real you get. Like, you don't complicate things or use big words all the time, but you just say, like, you'll just say clear cut, like, this is what, God wants you to do, or this is what I went through. And I really like that realness, because it validates you as a speaker, because you tell your story, and that you're not just someone who had it all together, but you're still growing through that. I think that you were really modest in what the titles you are, but I think you're a multifaceted person, that you're not just a pastor, but like we said, you're a graphic designer. We didn't get to talk about it on the episode today, but you're working on a few books going on, and even that idea you talked to me about. So I think that you have a skill set that is like, God's just going to keep elevating you and growing you and putting you in places that like are going to even be beyond just worship and pastoring. Like, I honestly see that. And I just celebrate you, because like I said, people don't know the work that you put into making sure OPC like runs on like the programming, the services, the special events, like a regular Sunday morning, how much prep is put into that. You're there early, you're grinding and doing all that stuff. So as a member of OPC, I'm just so thankful and grateful to you for that. And just how like, you're just, you're part of that change and that elevation of where we're going to with OPC. So I just want to encourage you, just keep doing you, just keep being yourself. And like, I'm so glad that God brought you out of little Bathurst to Toronto, because I think we've been so blessed by just your ministry and just you as a person. So
Thank you.
So that wraps up our show today. Like Kara said, she's not really into social media, but if you want to connect to her, I'm sure there's a way that I can always get you guys to connect with her. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And Kara, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.